for me, I stress to the kids that the most important thing, and I teach 6th grade and high school, that they could ever get is what Judaism means to them. Because ultimately, we all change that view as we age and as we come into different experiences. But as you were mentioning before, and as you said, if they don't identify in any way of what Judaism, if they don't ever start asking the questions of what it means to me and why it's important, then eventually you find yourself, I know for me personally, nobody ever, among all the teaching experiences I had in Hebrew school, nobody ever posed that question to me. And you go off to college. I remember being away from home at University of Maryland, and came the holiday times, and Maryland had all services, you know, Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox. But you find yourself saying, because classes aren't let out, that you're making the decision to go knowing that you're missing important classes, and you don't have your parents there. No matter how much you love your parents, you don't have, Dad's not going to be disappointed that you didn't go, because Dad doesn't have to know if you didn't go.
Right.
And all of a sudden you find yourself saying, why should I go then? And for me, that journey was difficult because I had to, all of a sudden, out on my own, all these new experiences, decide that for myself. So to me, if we could establish in them and get them to start wondering that now, then that kind of sets them on the path of, throughout everything in their life, meshing how Judaism has a place, why it has a place.
So you raised an incredible point. I want to reword it a little. And some of you know that I've launched a private venture called Jewish Connectivity, and we're not going to talk much about it. If you're interested in it, I'm going to hand around a sign-up sheet, and I'll be happy to email you information about it. But my core question in that work, and a lot of that work is Jewish family life coaching, my core question in that work is, how does Jewish, not Judaism, but how does Jewish add value to your life, okay? And I think that's really your core question, okay? And the core question of our teaching. How is Jewish going to add value to our students' life? And how do we get them to even see that as a useful question? Now, that Jewish may be ritual, that Jewish may be Hebrew language cultural, that Jewish may be a social network, it may be any number of things. But it still asks that same question: how does this add value to my life and to what I want to be, or who I want to be? Is that fair?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I start off the year asking that question and having students do an artwork drawing of
what grade?
6th, of what Judaism means to them, why they consider themselves Jewish.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, you get kids ranging from going to prayer services, kids saying learning about Torah, and then of course the most obvious one, the holidays, the traditions of it. You have other people being connected to a group of people. So yeah, it's very interesting, and that implants, because that's a starting point.
Yeah.
And I tell the kids that will always evolve. As long as you're always asking why that has a place, that evolution will constantly change.
So another thing about the mashup, thank you, and another thing about the mashup too, is that it challenges our assumptions. So our assumptions, okay, whether it's about Israel, none of us have lived in Israel. If we've lived in Israel, it's been a long time ago. And we may go back, we may visit, but we're visiting, unfortunately, when we visit, we visit as tourists, not as people, you know, who are totally immersed in it. We lived our own Jewish lives. We're raising kids. Most of our schools in synagogues, in temples, are geared to helping kids to be good members of synagogues in the 1950s. Okay, I'll say it again. Most of our synagogues are geared to helping our students be good adult members of synagogues from the 1950s. Okay? What I mean by that is, where I am today is not where my parents were in their Jewish lives. My Jewish community doesn't look like theirs. My Jewish life doesn't look like theirs. But we still teach as if I was going to retrofit myself into that Jewish community. We still teach the kids today. We have the following challenge. We have no idea what our students' Jewish worlds are going to look like. Okay? We're redefining community. Beth Finger out in Suffolk County has created Jewish Without Walls. It's about how do you do Jewish without literally a building around you and membership dues. Okay? You have independent synagogues all over the country now that aren't affiliated with any movements, that have created a different version of the old Havurah model, where a lot of learning is taking place. You have Chabad challenging the status quo and doing, in effect, they're very clear about what their value is, and they urge you to give them money to support their set of values, good, bad, or otherwise, right? But we're still teaching our kids as if the Jewish world 20 and 30 years from now, when they're going to be adults, is going to look like it did in the 1950s when every synagogue had, did I hit home? And I actually wrote an article once called Blowing Up the Bima. What it was about was one of my earliest, I'll tell you it's on my blog, but along with other, somewhat psychotic ramblings. When I wrote the article, I was thinking back to my days as a pulpit rabbi before I became a DJ, and in those days, I was assistant rabbi of a synagogue in Atlanta, Georgia, that had a solid concrete bima. Okay, it was at the front of the synagogue with hot lights. I mean, you were like in a sauna. If you were up there, I mean really hot lights. Okay, and the architecture said very clearly, anything that's important going on in the synagogue is happening where? Which is 6 feet elevated from you and inaccessible by wheelchair. Okay? Right? And nothing of any importance is happening in the pews where the lighting was poor and it was dark and it looked like the cavern where the Beatles played their early concerts in Liverpool. You don't know from this, but
No, actually, I
do you? Nice,
Yeah,
nice. Okay, you were raised well. So the message was very clear. Everything was happening up front. Seats were arranged in rows facing forward. Okay. By the way, in the Sanhedrin in ancient Israel, the Supreme Court, Senate, everything was in a circle like this, so everyone could see each other and everyone was on an equal footing. Just putting that out. So we said,
And the people with the least status spoke first?
Yeah, okay. So we tried to do away with the architecture. And we went to the architect, and the architect went to the contractor and said, you would have to dynamite the bima. Literally, you would have to dynamite the bima. And this was true of any synagogue built in the 40s, 50s, and maybe early 60s even. Okay, if you wanted to actually move to the circle or move the rabbi into the middle of the congregation instead of being up there, or put a set of turntables in the middle, okay, you would have to literally dynamite the bima. And that led me to write this piece called Blowing Up the Bima. And how do we blow